Hello, friends. Let's continue our discussion on consideration. So far, we have seen that consideration is nothing but the price of a promise. And what is the meaning of price of a promise? Let's say you are the one making a promise to the other party. Then it means that the price of the promise is what do I get in return for making a promise. When you make a promise to somebody, what is it that you are expecting in return? That is the price of your promise. And we had seen one example, A and B example, where A had offered to sell his pen to B at rupees 10. Promise made by A here is to sell the pen. Promise by B is to pay rupees 10. All right. Now, what is the price of this promise? Price of the promise made by A here is rupees 10, because when A makes a promise to sell the pen to B, what does A want in return? A wants rupees 10. And what is the price of B's promise? When B pays rupees 10 to A, what does B want in return? B wants the pen. So rupees 10 is the consideration to be provided by B. Okay, and pen is the consideration to be provided by A. It means that both the parties, offerer and the offeree, both the parties have to provide consideration. Okay, now there could be two scenarios. One, let's say on one side we have offerer and on the other side we have the offeree. I just told you that both the sides have to provide consideration. What if consideration is provided by only one party? It means that there is no valid consideration. Why are we saying so? Because consideration needs to be mutual. Both the parties have to provide consideration. If any of the parties does not provide the consideration, then the consideration is not valid. All right. Second, what if there is no consideration? Provided by any party or both the parties. What I mean to say is, in the first scenario, we talked about a situation where one party is not giving consideration. This scenario talks about a situation where both the parties are not providing any consideration. Here also, there is no valid consideration because neither the offerer nor the offeree is providing any consideration. All right. So, therefore, we know that consideration needs to be mutual. It means that one party must give something and the other party must give something in return. All right. This is the meaning of mutual consideration. And if this condition is not fulfilled, then the consideration is not valid. Example, take the pen example. A offers to sell the pen to B, okay, at rupees 10. A gives the pen to B. B does not give anything in return. B does not give anything in return for the pen. Question: do we have valid consideration? The answer is no, because we know that both the sides will have to provide consideration. In this case, B is not providing any consideration. Therefore, the consideration is not mutual, and hence the consideration is invalid. We also saw that consideration must have some value in the eyes of law. And we discussed that there are two important elements here. Let's break it down. The first part is till here, and the second part is this. It means that number one, consideration must be sufficient and not adequate. The adequacy is not a requirement for the consideration to be valid. Law does not say that the consideration needs to be adequate. Adequate, what is the meaning of adequate? Adequate means something which is equal or fair. So if I'm giving you a pen worth rupees 10, you will have to give me rupees 10 or something of an equivalent value. That is when you say that the value is adequate. Okay. But with respect to consideration, our law is quite clear. It says that we are not bothered about adequacy of consideration. As long as the consideration is sufficient, that is fine. Okay. It means that the law does not care whether the deal is fair or not. Whether the deal is fair or not. And we'd seen one example yesterday. A selling his bike worth rupees 5 lakh to B at rupee 1. So A offered to sell his bike which is worth rupees 5 lakh to B at just rupee 1. So B is supposed to pay just rupee 1 to A for the bike which costs around 5 lakh rupees. If we ask a question that whether this consideration to be given by B, is that consideration adequate? The answer is no. The consideration is not adequate, because adequacy means a value which is equivalent or fair. In this case, if B is paying just rupee 1 for a bike which is worth rupees 5 lakh, we know for sure that the consideration given by B is not adequate. But we just discussed that consideration is not required to be adequate. It is not mandatory that consideration should be adequate. The only requirement is that the consideration should be sufficient. Okay. And in this case, we had seen that consideration given by B is valid. And why did we say so? That will bring us to this part of the concept, eyes of law. When can you say that consideration is sufficient or has some value? We just discussed that consideration needs to have some value in the eyes of law. Question is, yes, we know that it is not a mandatory requirement for a consideration to be adequate. We have established that, but one doubt still remains. What is the meaning of some value? When you say consideration needs to have some value, what does it mean exactly? It means that the law must recognize it. Okay? And And how do you determine whether the law recognizes a particular form of consideration or not? You will have to apply this test that we had discussed. Can the court enforce that consideration? It basically means, can the court order that party to provide the consideration which is in dispute? If the answer is yes, if yes, then consideration has some value in the eyes of law. In our bike example, can the court order B to pay rupee 1 to A? The answer is yes, because A court knows that rupee 1 has a legal value. Okay, rupee 1 is a unit of value. And B, and they can of course ask B to pay rupee 1. It is very well possible and very well within the authority of the court to order B to make the payment of rupee 1 to A. Therefore, this consideration is valid, even if it is not adequate. All right. And let's understand this point. Can the court enforce the consideration with the help of one more example, which we had seen yesterday also? NLSIU and your example. You are not able to clear CLAT, let's suppose, but you are extremely rich. So you contact NLSIU and you offer to pay them rupees 10 lakh for a seat at NLSIU. NLSIU initially agrees. Okay, so you have offer made by you. NLSIU's acceptance is also there. Question is this a valid agreement? To determine that, you would need to see whether you have consideration as well, because we know that agreement is offer plus acceptance plus consideration, and we just saw that offer is there, acceptance is there, consideration. What is the consideration here to be given by you? Consideration to be given by you is rupees 10 lakh. Question, and we know that consideration will be valid if the court can enforce it. All right, let's see if the court can enforce this consideration. And consideration will be valid if the court can enforce that consideration. Can the court enforce payment of rupees 10 lakh? Can the court do so? Ask yourself. The answer is no. Why not? Because it will be a bribe. It will be a bribe, which is a criminal offense. Therefore, even if rupees 10 lakh technically can be paid, because 10 lakh is also measure of value, okay? But the court will not enforce this consideration because it is a bribe. All right. So that is the test. Whenever somebody asks you that what is consideration, your answer should be consideration is something that has some value in the eyes of law. And your explanation should be something, a consideration will have some value in the eyes of law only when the court is able to enforce that consideration. All right. Today we will discuss the requirements of a valid consideration. The first requirement is that it must be real and possible. It simply means that, let's say A tells B that A offers to sell his pen to B. Okay. In return, A wants the moon from B. Okay, so A is selling his pen to B, and the thing that A wants in return is not money or anything else. A wants B to get the moon for him from the sky. So let's see, do we have consideration here? To determine that, we will have to see price of the promise. What is A's promise? A's promise is to sell the pen. Okay, what is the price of that promise? Price is moon. Question: can the court enforce it? Can the court direct B to get the moon for A? The answer is no. Therefore, this consideration is invalid. Hence, we say that it must be real and possible. Okay, consideration should be real and possible. All right. So, that is the first requirement. Second requirement is it must be, consideration must not be illegal, immoral, or against public policy. One example we have already seen: bribery. When you offered to pay rupees 10 lakh to NLSIU, the consideration to be paid by you is a bribe. Okay, and bribery is illegal. Hence, the consideration that you had offered to pay to NLSIU, that consideration is invalid because that consideration is illegal. And we just saw that consideration cannot be illegal. Okay. Second example of a consideration that is illegal, it could be, let's say, A offers to pay rupees 100 to B for killing C. A tells B that if B goes ahead and kills C, A will pay B 100 rupees. What is the consideration to be paid by A in this case? Consideration to be paid by A is rupees 100. Question: is the consideration valid? To know that, you will need to see whether this consideration is legal or not. Paying money to someone for killing somebody, is that legal or illegal? The answer is illegal. Paying money to kill someone is illegal. Hence, this consideration is also illegal and therefore not a valid consideration. Let's look at another example. Let's say A and B. A offers to pay rupees 10 lakh to B if B can broker the marriage of A's daughter with Virat Kohli. Okay, so A is basically A no. So B is somebody who is close to Virat Kohli. Okay, so A tells B that if you can get Virat Kohli to marry my daughter, I will pay you rupees 10 lakh. Okay. Question: is the consideration to be paid by A, consideration to be paid by A, which is rupees 10 lakh, is this consideration valid or not? How will you answer this? Now we know that what has B been asked to do in this scenario? What is B required to do? B is required to arrange a marriage. Is arranging somebody's marriage legal or illegal? We know that it is not illegal. That is why you have so many websites in India, shadi.com and jeevansathi.com and all. So arranging somebody's marriage is not illegal. This is not illegal. Okay. So can we say that this is a valid consideration? The answer is, hold on. You will need to read this condition once again. Condition number 2. It says consideration must not be illegal, immoral, or against public policy. Now, if I were to ask you, arranging somebody's marriage, arranging someone's marriage for money, is it moral or immoral? The answer is immoral. Now you may ask me, then how are these people, shadi.com, jeevansathi.com, how are they arranging marriages? The answer is they are not arranging your marriage. They are merely providing you a platform where you can connect with your future life partner. They are not brokering your marriage. You're not paying them to broker or to arrange your marriage. You are paying them only because you want to use their platform. All right, that is the crucial distinction. So, arranging someone's marriage for money is immoral, and any consideration which is immoral is not a valid consideration. All right, so remember these two conditions. First condition was consideration must be real and possible to perform. All right, and remember the moon example. And second is consideration must not be illegal, immoral, or opposed to public policy. I gave you a couple of examples for illegal and immoral. I want you to find out an example of when does a consideration when is a consideration opposed to public policy. All right, I want you guys to find that. All right, tomorrow we will look at a few more conditions, like consideration should move at the desire of the promisor only. Okay, it simply means that if A has a pen and B wants to buy that pen, let's say A does not make an offer to B, but B pays rupees 10 to A and now asks A to give the pen to B. Question is, has this consideration been paid by B at the desire of A? The answer is no. So we are going to look at this aspect in detail tomorrow, which says that consideration should flow only at the desire of the promiser or the offerer. Okay, the offerer should make this desire to the offeree, and only after that the offeree should pay the consideration to the offerer. All right, this is one sec. We will also look at this situation which says that consideration can be given by a third party. And lastly, consideration can be past consideration, present consideration, or future consideration. So we are going to look at these three conditions tomorrow. All right. Until then, keep revising, keep studying. Thank you so much.